Hello everybody and welcome back to Carried Away Travels. In this week's video, I'm going to tell you about the most exciting thing we did on our Carnival cruise to the Bahamas, which was swimming with reef sharks. In February of 2025, Daniel and I took a 7-day cruise from Norfolk, Virginia to the Bahamas on the newly refreshed Carnival Sunshine, and we had such an amazing time. I actually just did 2 videos going over all the things you can expect on that ship, from staterooms and dining options to the nightlife and the entertainment and things like that. So if you're interested in taking that cruise, be sure to check those videos out as well. But today I want to focus on this awesome short excursion that we got to do while we were in Bimini. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you may be thinking that a cruise isn't necessarily our typical scene, and that is very true. Daniel and I very much like to do nature and adventure experiences, so although we were taking a cruise to the Bahamas where everything's all-inclusive and bright lights and entertainment, we really did want to get out in the Bahamas and do some exploring in those beautiful blue waters and see some of the wildlife and types of things that are pretty unique to that area. We ended up having port stops in Bimini, Nassau, and Freeport ended up being pretty much just a shopping day, but we were also able to get away from the main port in Nassau and we went swimming with the pigs and we had an amazing beach day in Sun Cay. So if you're interested in that as well, I also have a video review about all that you should definitely check out. The pigs were adorable, but that was definitely a much calmer experience than jumping in the water with a bunch of sharks here in Bimini. Now, as someone who has like a deathly fear of sharks, this was a big deal for me. Swimming with sharks has been on Daniel's list for quite a while. He thinks that's awesome. I am terrified something's going to eat me. So this was a heart-pumping adventure for me at every turn, even though the reef sharks were very friendly. This was just a big leap for me, so I'm very proud of myself for getting in the water. I'm not gonna lie, but I do think it was a very fun experience and it just went so smoothly. It was a lot of fun. So I do want to share all the details about that with you and help you decide if this is the kind of activity that you'd enjoy while you're in the Bahamas. Real quick before we dive in, I just want to introduce myself to anyone who is new here. My name is Carrie, and I share helpful travel tips, itineraries, gear recommendations, and more, so you can always have the perfect trip. My goal with every video is to give you all the information you need to make informed decisions, so you can decide if a particular location or activity is a good fit for you to help you have the best time possible. So if that sounds like the kind of videos you want more of in your feed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to get more videos like that from me in the future. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so first things first, I do want to talk very briefly about booking short excursions through Carnival versus independent bookings. Now, if you're watching this video and you're just going to visit Bimini on your own, this does not apply to you. But if, like me, you're coming in on a cruise ship, whether that is Carnival or any other cruise line, there's some very important information you should know before you book tours just with any company. So when you arrive in port, you are going to have a very strict timeline where you are allowed to be in Bimini. Now for us, we actually ended up having some extra time because we only had a 2-hour tour and the area where we could explore was fairly small. Plus, since Bimini only has one berth for a cruise ship, we pretty much had the place to ourselves, so that made it so much easier just to get around and get through like security and all that. It was so simple. However, there are definitely longer tours or multiple tours that you can do during your time in Bimini, and so what you need to be aware of is if you book a tour with an independent party just on the island, not through the cruise website, and it goes long or you get stuck somewhere and you do not make it back to the ship by departure time, the ship will leave you there. Now, the Bahamas are a beautiful place if you are going to get stranded anywhere, but it is on your dime to get to either the next island or to get yourself home if you miss that departure time. However, if you book a tour through the cruise ship and there's some sort of issue and you're not back by the designated departure time, they will wait for you. But that only applies if you book directly through the cruise line. Now, that is some fantastic peace of mind, and for that reason, we booked both of our short excursions directly through Carnival Cruise, which has its pros and cons. The biggest pro being that guaranteed ability to get back on the boat. That's huge. Another plus is that they do give some exclusive deals for booking directly through the Carnival Cruise Line. In Nassau, I did a side-by-side comparison of the specific tour we got to go on for independent bookings versus booking directly through the Carnival Cruise, and we actually saved some money by booking directly through Carnival. However, anywhere you go, there are going to be a ton of tours that you can find online, and they're all just a little bit different, very similar, but there's going to be a wide price range. So you may find a tour that is cheaper to book outside of Carnival, but you just have to keep in mind the time frames and make sure that the time frame for that tour aligns well with what you have available for the time that Carnival cruise ship is in port. Something else to be aware of, which was kind of frustrating for us, was that the port times shifted. We had a couple days where the time in port got cut short or shifted back. So if you are going to book with a third party, you need to make sure that there is some flexibility there in case your ship has to leave early or you don't get into port until later. So that's just something else to keep in mind. Just to clarify, we knew in advance when those port times changed, but it was after we'd already gotten on the ship. So for example, if I had booked a reef shark snorkeling tour with an independent party 3 weeks before we got on the boat and it was non-refundable, that might not have worked with the new times we had in port that we did not find out about until like 2 days before we were there. All right, so as I mentioned, we really like to do more nature and wildlife and adventure experiences. So we were specifically looking for that kind of thing when we got into Bimini. There are plenty of other things you can do there. There's a couple resorts, there's beaches. We really wanted to do something a little more thrilling than just lay on the beach. So that did help narrow down our options. And when we saw snorkeling, which is one of our favorite activities, that narrowed it down even further to either snorkeling through the SS Sapona shipwreck or over the coral reef with the reef sharks. Now, one of my other big watery fears is dark enclosed watery spaces. I do not do well with enclosed water slides, so I was not thinking it would be a good idea for me to go into a shipwreck with sharks at this time. So we opted to do just the reef shark snorkeling over the coral reef because that seemed a little safer and more manageable for my first time. I think the price difference between the two tours was about $5 per person, so that wasn't like a big deal at all. And we ended up paying $120 per person for this 2.5-hour tour that included just about everything we needed for a really great experience. Again, we booked that directly through the Carnival cruise site, but it was hosted by Bimini Blue Adventures, which is right there on the island. They have a little office right by the docks, and so it was a very seamless experience to have their staff pick us up right by the boat and take our whole tour group right to their office and then onto their boat. So that $120 included staff to help us at every step of the way. They're all very friendly, competent, no complaints. They did a fantastic job. Life jackets, snorkeling gear, which was fins and a mask, bottled water, rum punch when we were done, transportation to and from the reef, and then about 30 minutes snorkeling with the reef sharks. Now, in addition to this, there are a few other things I would personally recommend that you bring along with you, including reef safe sunscreen, a quick drying towel. I personally love Turkish towels because they're so packable and they dry so fast, and you can use them as a cover up as well. Sunglasses. I like floating sunglasses just in case because you never know what's going to happen, but good sunglasses is also a good idea to have some extra water, a waterproof pouch for your phone, or like a waterproof camera. We use our GoPro. And I also recommend a dry bag because it's just a great way to keep all of your valuables dry and safe. And if it does happen to fall into the water, it floats. So you have a better chance of getting all your stuff back. But now that we've got all of that preliminary stuff out of the way, let's talk about the actual reef shark snorkeling experience. So like I said, we had a staff member from Bimini Blue Adventures meet us right by the ship and lead our whole group directly to the office. Now there are trams that run from the dock into the actual town, but we walked. I'm not sure why that is. Probably just to make sure the whole group stayed together, but you do need to be prepared to walk all the way from the ship down the dock, across the bridge, and into town to the like smaller dock area there. So that did take about 15 minutes, and I did hear some people complaining about it, which is fair. I did not mind because it was so pretty. Like the views of the water and the beach are absolutely gorgeous. So do be prepared to walk. Make sure you have some good shoes for that. They will make sure you get all the way through town. It's very short. You'll walk through the Fisherman's Village. And then once you get to the Bimini Blue Adventures office, everyone's going to be required to sign a waiver. They have, I believe, 3 tablets right outside, and you'll just fill that out. And when you're done, I would recommend you go ahead and just get ready to get on the boat. So we use that time to put on our sunscreen, take off our swim cover-ups, and get our GoPro set up so we were all ready to go. Once everyone had signed their waivers, we walked directly to the boat that we would be in for the day. It was about 30 seconds from the office, so it was very easy to get to. And the staff members handed everyone a life jacket as soon as we got on board, and then we found a place to sit. I thought the boat was a perfectly decent size for our group. We had a few extra seats left. There wasn't crazy space, but everyone was very comfortable and found a good place to settle in for the ride to the reef, which took about 30 minutes or so. But again, it was so beautiful. These waters are just so gorgeously blue, and in so many places we could see all the way down to the bottom, which was just insane. You could see some fish, you could see the like algae and all the different things down below you as you're rushing by. It was just so fun. I loved every second of it. There were some areas that were a little more marshy like as well, and there were some water birds. There's just so much to see on that 30-minute boat ride. So I would definitely recommend you just relax and settle in and enjoy it. Take some pictures because that scenery is just so picture perfect. Now, during this initial 30-minute boat ride, the crew was going around and making sure that everyone was ready to go as soon as we got to the reef. So they were handing out goggles and breathing tubes as well as flippers. They made sure everyone had the right size so we could all be comfortable. And they also passed out some bottled waters too. And something I did want to point out, if you've never been snorkeling before and maybe like one of your concerns is that you're not a great swimmer, we were required to wear our life vests throughout the entire thing. So basically all you had to do was jump in and float and just stick your face in the water and breathe through the tube. So that did make it very simple. We didn't have wetsuits or anything, so it was just the mask and fins and the life jacket, but it was a very chill experience, really no exertion required. So I felt like this was a very beginner friendly snorkeling experience too. Now, right when we arrived at the reef, we saw sharks. That, I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't think I was expecting to see like 3 of them approach our boat as soon as we stopped. That was crazy to me, but I had no idea how many were actually going to be in the water. I'm very proud of myself for going in and not having a freak out, but part of me wonders if I would have gotten in if I'd known there was going to be like 11 to 15 sharks just chilling down there. But anyways, once we stopped, the crew gave us some very detailed instructions on where to swim. They made sure we didn't go anywhere near the propellers. So they basically drew a line with the anchor line and then told us not to go past a certain part of the reef. And we really didn't need to go far anyways because the sharks really congregated right around the boat anyways. So that was where all the action was. We didn't really have a reason to go much farther than that. Now, we had about 30 minutes to snorkel with the sharks. And again, really all we had to do was just float and stick your face in the water. And the sharks were swimming all around us. It was actually a rather surreal experience. And I kept getting jump scares because a shark would just swim right beside me or underneath me. And you do have limited visibility with the goggles. So I started kind of turning my head to see where they were because they were all around us. But again, most of them were hanging out right by the boat or under the boat. And so we had 30 minutes just to chill and see them doing their thing. They were not scared of us at all. They just really did seem to care that we were there, which definitely gave me some peace of mind. This wasn't their first tourist experience. So again, it was just very chill. And after a few minutes, it was easy just to kind of relax and enjoy it and be like, hey, I'm swimming with sharks. This is awesome. Now, the actual like coral reef wasn't really what I expected. I didn't really see a whole lot with it, and I'm not sure if I didn't go back far enough or I just had a misconception of what it was supposed to be. But there wasn't a whole lot of reef where I was. However, there were a decent number of tropical fish. Nothing crazy like we've seen in some other parts, but there were some cool tropical fish down below. They were mostly down at the bottom, while the sharks stayed up more on surface to mid-level. So there was kind of something going on at all levels of the ocean right there. So it definitely kept things interesting. And that 30 minutes went by so fast. When they said it was time to go in, I could not believe that we were already done because I was enjoying it so much. So at that point, we one by one climbed up the ladder, handed the staff our flippers so we could get up a little bit easier, and fell back on the boat to dry off. But one thing before we left was as soon as everyone was safely back on the boat, the crew showed us what a feeding frenzy looked like. So they had some fish that they chopped up and they chucked that out in the water. And I was shocked at how fast those sharks swam because for that 30 minutes, they were just chilling. They were circling, doing their thing. As soon as that fish hit the water, they all just swarmed. And I think that was the moment I also realized how many sharks had actually been in the water with us because when they're swimming all around, it's hard to get a count. But there were so many and they just went all crazy on that like hunk of fish. And then they did it on the other side as well. So everyone got to see that action up close. And that was just such a insane but fun way to wrap up that part of the tour. The last thing they did as we were heading back was they handed out rum punch to everybody who wanted it. It's a traditional Bahamian drink made with rum. I'm not sure what else is in there. But they handed cups of that out to everyone. And if you wanted refills, they let you get refills as well. And then they also had like more bottled water if you just wanted to hydrate. And after that, we just got to relax and enjoy the ride back to the port. Once we docked, we were pretty much on our own to get back to the ship. But again, we had plenty of time. We had, I think, like 7 hours in port, and this was like 2.5 total. So there were restrooms right by the docks that we could use since it is, again, like a 15-minute walk back to the actual ship. So they had the bathrooms there, and then we were free to explore the island if we wanted. However, we wanted to get out of our wet clothes, so we chose to walk back to the ship. Actually, we caught the tram on the way back in, and then change and come back. So if you do this tour, they did have 2 time slots, I believe. The 12:30 and then I think one at like 3. So you could get either one. We chose to do it at the very beginning of our port time so that we could have just a lot of uninterrupted afternoon and evening to see what else Bimini had to offer. I am actually planning to do a follow-up video in a couple weeks about all the different things you can do in this part of Bimini. So be sure to stay tuned for that if you're interested in learning about the Fisherman's Village or Resort World and things like that. If you couldn't tell, we had a great time. This was so fun. It had a really good amount of thrill, at least I think so, but also it wasn't really exerting at all. Like, this is definitely an adventure, but the hardest thing we had to do was walk. Everything else was pretty much handed to us. So if you're kind of looking for that nice balance of you want that thrill, but you don't really want to have to work for it, this is such a great option. Now, if you're looking for more of an intensive adventure tour, you will probably need to book something outside of the Carnival Cruise website, just because the kind of tours they offer tend to be a little easier like this, but not in every case. So do your research. If this doesn't seem like the best fit for you, see what else is out there. But for our first experience, especially something like this where I was facing my fears, I thought this was just such a great experience. All right, guys, that wraps up my review of this reef shark snorkeling experience in Bimini, Bahamas. If you're looking for a little bit more information about this, I do have a full written blog post on my website at www.cochranewriting.com, where I break everything down in written form if you want to skim. I also have links to my favorite travel gear. I mentioned a few things that I would recommend you take with you. So I have links to those items in my Amazon affiliate shop. If you want to use the stuff that I use and love, you can find direct links to all of those items there. You will also find on YouTube and on my blog more information about our trip to the Bahamas. Like I mentioned, the Carnival Cruise review, parts 1 and 2, swimming with the pigs in Nassau, and I have more information coming about Bimini and what I learned on the Carnival Cruise and things to do on Pearl Island and all that fun stuff. So if you are looking for more Bahama Cruise content, make sure you check all that out and stay tuned for my upcoming videos. Thank you so much for stopping by to watch this video review. I hope that it was helpful for you. But if you do have additional questions or comments, please feel free to drop those down below. I love to hear from you guys. And if you have questions, I will be happy to answer those as quickly as possible. And once again, if you are not subscribed to Carried Away Travels, I would love if you would hit that subscribe button before you go. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Maybe share it with whoever you're going to visit Bahamas with. And I hope that you will be back very soon for the next adventure. Thank you again, and happy travels.